Good evening, my friends. I'm Nero. This evening is a dark and stormy evening, and as such, we are using a different method to record this evening and upload, as it turns out. We'll also be doing something a little different, so I thought I would share with you 3 stories from another dark and stormy evening. The first is how I saved a kid's life. I was driving down the interstate, rain pouring, thunder in the distance, and I see this figure, this kid, walking through the middle of the median of the interstate. No one stopped, no one's checking, no one's doing anything, so I do. I stop. I pull to the side of the interstate. I get this kid out of the rain, and we begin driving around, crying out for the kid's parents. And I can't find anyone. No one knows who this kid is. I'm calling people I know in the area, asking, do you know anybody who's missing a kid? And nobody knows. Nobody has any idea. Finally, I backtrack and I go back and forth, up and down these dirt roads, trying to find anyone. Finally, I see a man standing out by his machine shed. And I pull in and I ask, excuse me, are you missing a kid? And the man takes one look. Oh, yes, that's my kid. Thank you so much. And he takes the kid and puts it back with the rest of the goats. And he's very grateful to have his kid back. A bit of a more amusing one, a lighter-hearted one, certainly. But true, nonetheless. I picked up a goat from the middle of the median of the interstate and drove around until I found the farmer to whom it belonged. The second story is more of a surreal experience. It was midwinter, late November, and we were visiting the highest point in Oklahoma on our way to New Mexico. The roads from there are not ideal. The roads went from blacktop asphalt to pothole dirt roads down a narrow valley, no exit in sight. For about 50 miles past the Oklahoma border, we drove through snow and ice, slush and sleet, dark, cloudy, overcast skies. And then we reached a most curious town. I would love to meet anyone who has been to this town or lives near this town who could maybe tell me more about what I experienced that day. Because as I mentioned, it was getting on into winter. There was snow everywhere, deep piles of snow. It was frigid, freezing temperatures. And as we pulled into the town of Folsom, New Mexico, I looked around at all the buildings, and nothing had smoke or steam coming from it. There were no lights on in Folsom, New Mexico. The town was dark, the town was quiet, there was no traffic, there was no pedestrians, there was no one throughout this entire town. As we drove through, it was an eerie silence. The streets had not been plowed, nor had they been driven on. The entire day, everything was covered in a blanket of snow. And yet, there was no smoke, there was no heat, there was no light. The town was dark, the town was quiet, the town was empty. The town seemed to be abandoned. Except, as we left, there was a flock of farm geese, bright white with their orange feet and bills, waddling down the street, following one young girl. Couldn't have been more than 8 or 9, in green leggings, blue coat with a bright pink backpack. And she was simply trudging through the snow down the street until she heard our car. She heard our car. She heard our car. And she stopped. And she turned on her heel and looked at us with a blank expression. And then she smiled and she waved. And then her smile left. And her expression went blank again. And she turned back on her heel and continued trudging through the snow. To this day, I am convinced the population of Folsom consists of one very creepy little girl and a flock of geese. I have yet to have evidence otherwise. The reason this journey caught my eye so much was because it reminded me of a journey I take regularly. A place that I have considered my manse, my seat of power. A surreal and supernatural location akin to the Twilight Zone or Night Vale, where I find myself most disturbingly comfortable. And that is Lyman, Colorado. Specifically, the Lyman, Colorado Flying J. This place I have yet to visit without experiencing a supernatural or surreal encounter. You see, the Lyman, Colorado Flying J has a connected IHOP, and yet I have never seen the IHOP have pancakes. Above the IHOP, there are windows, and there are lights in those windows, but there is no second floor above the Lyman, Colorado Flying J IHOP. One must conclude that this is where the architects of the Lyman, Colorado Flying J dwell and work their dark machinations. There was a visit where there was no fuel. The Lyman, Colorado had no fuel, and yet it remained open. People continued passing through, getting who knows what, and upon our return they had fuel again, the prices lit in blood-red numbers, glaring through the sky. There were too many vehicles for how few people there were. There couldn't have been more than half a dozen people in the entire building, and yet there were several dozen vehicles in the parking lot of the Lyman, Colorado Flying J. There's a hallway that continues much further than anyone can reach. It's a non-Euclidean space within. There is a tailless cat that guards one door, and one is forced to conclude that the other door is being guarded by an equally enigmatic catless tail. They are neither hostile nor friendly. They simply exist in this place that has rain on a sunny day. I do not know what dark powers reside in that place, this Lyman, Colorado Flying J. They fascinate and they horrify me. So if you're ever in the area, do visit. And for now, my friends, stay safe in this dark and stormy night. For now, my friends, farewell.